Hello everyone and welcome to another UnTac stream. This is going to be the Team Series final between Team UB and Team DOLT, I believe. And we're getting into the Frontier match from Team B, which is going to be Derpy Elephant versus Masinmanc. And this is going to be a pretty interesting matchup. It is Bug versus Bug. One is the Dredge deck and one is a Midrange deck, featuring some really big hitters such as Hydroid Krasis. So if you're not familiar with the team series, the way it works is you get teams of players together that are all playing similar formats, and they play against other teams playing the same format. So you have, in this case, Frontier versus Frontier, Modern Modern, and Legacy Legacy. And whoever gets 2 out of 3 of those matches wins the entire match. And that's how everything's going to be working. So we are getting into the finals here, and this is, I believe, the first game that's going to be played of this finals. And we had time to talk to both players before the event and get some insight into what led both of them to play the decks that they're playing. So in this case, starting with Masin, we basically asked him, hey, tell us a little bit about your Magic experience. So he said he started playing the Dredge deck that he's playing specifically for this team event, and it's the second match ever officially that he's going to be playing with it. He's not really had any notable finishes with this deck list yet, but he's got 3 Frontier League wins in UOL and Cockatrice League, a second place finish in UOL Frontier, a top 8 in UOL Frontier, all of those on Atarka Red, 1 top 8 on Blue-Black Control in UOL, currently in top 8 with DOLT 169, and yeah, it's obviously we have a lot of very high tier placings with Mazin. He says that his opponent's list has no interaction pre- or post-board for the graveyard, so he feels heavily favored, and that was something that Derpy Elephant also definitely echoed, is that he felt very, very favored, both pre- and post-board. Mazin's been playing since around Scourge, but competitively since Theros, which probably explains why he started picking up on Frontier. And he beat Glass's Chan 2-0 in the mirror match to get to the finals. And he says that the lineup of decks that the Frontier players chose was specifically to go against Target Red. And apparently I've got a little bit of life total issue going on. Let's fix this right now. Alright, that should be fixed. Thank you, Diamond, for covering that up. Alright, and on the other side, from Mazin, we've got Derpy Elephant, who says that he really picked up Sultai Midrange because it was a good deck against the Atarka Red decks that have been doing really well in Frontier League, and he's been playing it basically this whole time. Since Guilds of Ravnica Standard came out, Derpy, as opposed to Mazin, does not have a lot of top-tier finishes, but obviously coming in to the finals of this is a really notable finish, whether or not his team wins. He's been playing since 7th grade in middle school, and yeah, looks like not much else is going to go on here. So we are basically ready to get into the match. So we have, let's see if I can pull up the deck list for myself really quick. Sultai Dredge, they're listed in front of you guys for the stream. Sultai Dredge list is really, really cool. I quite enjoyed looking at this deck list. You've got a lot of self-mill stuff, Stitcher Supplier, Satyr Wayfinder, Gather the Pack. A lot of really good synergies with that, Creeping Chills, Narcomoebas, Prized Amalgams, Haunting Dead, and Gurmag Angler being really big payoffs, and then really cool spell, Driven to Despair, a list that Dredge has sometimes adapted to in Modern. It draws you a lot of cards. In Modern, it allows you to dredge, but here it's just drawing cards for pure card advantage, and then you can also flash it back with that Aftermath and make your opponent discard a bunch of cards. So Masin's going to be on the play because of higher seeding, and they are considering their opening hands. Derpy Elephant's deck is a more traditional bug mid-range list, featuring Llanowar Elves, Hydroid Krasis, Thief of Sanity, Tireless Tracker, 1 Frilled Mystic, 2 Ravenous Chupacabra, some Vivians, and an assortment of interactive spells. I do quite like a lot of the elements of this deck, but it's going to be very, very hard to convert into a win when your opponent wants to abuse the graveyard and you're trying to put things in the graveyard yourself. Hydroid Krasis and Vivian are probably the 2 best routes to victory here for Derpy, but it's going to be, again, challenging. So it looks like both players are good to go with their hands. And we're going to be getting underway shortly. Looks like we're going to get the turn back. Alright, here we go. So this looks like keepers for both. We've got lands and spells, lands and spells. It's been very interesting to see the evolution of some of these Frontier deck lists and their mana bases. They started off with a lot of fetches and a lot of ways to do things, but we're definitely looking much more like Modern now, fetches, shocks. So we have a fetch land and a tap shock land. It's going to be EOT fetch for Masin, I believe. Going to get probably... he could get a couple of things. It's hard to say. 3-color deck, so yeah. Going to get a Watery Grave. Make sure he gets blue mana. Does not want a breeding pool. If he's got that in the list, I don't even know, but let's see. Does he have a breeding pool in his list? Either way, wants to have access to blue mana. Green mana going to be coming from this Blooming Marsh. So, alright. Untap's going to happen shortly, and he does not actually have a breeding pool in the list, which is interesting. But we are going to get untapped. Draws Haunted Dead, a card that you're much more willing to mill, I would think, but either way, here's the first bit of self-mill, Satyr, Wayfinder, mill 5, then you can put a land from among those, or no, mill 4, and then you can put a land from among those in your hand, rest into the graveyard. So, Overgrown Tumor, Bloodstained Mire, and 2 Narcomoebas, really good hit. So these Narcomoebas get to immediately slide into play, and having free 1/1s that are flying is pretty nice. They also trigger Prized Amalgam, which says whenever a creature enters from your graveyard to the battlefield, you can bring back Prized Amalgam tapped for free. If the Amalgam was in the yard already, it would come back. It's not, it's in the hand. Still fine to get free 1/1s, and this is the value of that self-mill strategy. So untap draws a Cast Down. Cast Down, not particularly great on this board, obviously. You don't have a lot of good targets. The 1/1s aren't things you particularly care about getting rid of. So I don't think we're going to see Cast Down. We may see a Thought Erasure trying to take another one of these Graveyard Enablers out, or we could see a Llanowar Elf run out with a Fatal Push, or we're going to hold up, double Fatal Push, Cast Down. So there's a lot of interactive things you can do here. Not exactly, again, something you want to be using your removal on, but you have to do what you have to do in these matchups. So it looks like Masin's taking a second to think, to figure out what he wants to do. Collective Brutality, or Gather the Pack, or another Satyr Wayfinder, all options. Brutality would be very nice to run out here on probably modes Duress your hand and Drain 2 life, gets the Amalgam in the yard so that he can bring that back with any further Narcomoeba flips. Or he can just run out another Wayfinder or Gather the Pack to try and get more things in the yard. So first we hit swings for 3. Generally good idea to fire off combat before you try and play anything. Make your opponent make the least informed decisions possible. So before combat, we are going to get cast down or fatal push here. Let's see. We get push and push. So both Narcomoebas, which again Mazin did not really pay mana for, eat fatal pushes, which puts him up mana in the exchange, and in some ways tempo too. He's still ahead on board. He's fine letting these free Narcomoebas eat removal spells. It's not going to really affect him much. So 1 life down for Derpy. Post-combat main phase, we are going to get something. Another Satyr Wayfinder. So we are going to do the same thing. Look at the top 4, get a land, mill the rest. There's a lot of good synergies. Another free Narcomoeba and 2 Creeping Chill. Oh no, that's like Creeping Chill and a Gurmag Angler, excuse me. It's underneath the Polluted Delta. So you grab the Delta for free here. Creeping Chill is another free spell. It's going to drain 3 life for nothing, and there's another Narcomoeba. So by paying 2 mana for a spell, he's getting, this is 2 and 4 mana, 5, 6 mana worth of effects, plus a land in hand. It's actually quite a bit of value. And this is the power of using synergies like this. So Mazin's very far ahead so far, especially on board. And Derpy's kind of got to start to piece together some really powerful plays of his own, because there's a lot of value already coming out of this not quite a Dredge deck. Technically does not have Dredge in it, but same idea, self-mill for massive synergy. Alright, so passing the turn back to Derpy, draws another Hinterland Harbor. So at this point, you might as well run out of Llanowar if there's not a lot of point holding in the hand anymore. And again, you can cast down here, or you can Thought Erasure. Either way, we should see this Llanowar Elf come out. It could be a Thought Erasure before the Llanowar Elf, but I'm not entirely sure why you would do that. It does turn on one more mode of Collective Brutality, I suppose. But I would, at least personally, I would much rather have more mana. So this looks like, yeah, Thought Erasure coming out now. Look at the hand, figure out what's going on. In this case, I think you take Collective Brutality or the Gather the Pack. If you want to run out Llanowar, you're going to take Brutality, just so that doesn't have all of the modes. If not, you're going to take the Gather the Pack and stop him from doing even more self-milling and getting things back. But let's see what the choice is. Not a lot of good hits, so you automatically can't take the 2 lands. You're not going to take Prized Amalgam and let the Graveyard Synergy happen there. You are not going to have Haunted Dead in the graveyard for free. So it's just a matter of what do you value more, having another creature on the board and letting him continue the Graveyard Self Synergy, or turn off that Graveyard Self Synergy and let him get one more thing in the yard, but without a way to really add much value from it. Although if he does take Gather the Pack, that means that he can, I believe, open up Collective Brutality, discarding both, killing his own creature. Yes. So, there is something to be said that no matter what you do, Collective Brutality is going to be able to be fired off for max value. Yeah, so we're taking the Brutality, giving him no ways to get things out of his hand, but giving him more Graveyard Self-Synergy. And the graveyard at this point only has 1 instant or sorcery, so we don't have Spell Mastery for Gather, but that's fine. Alright. He's going to Surveil 1. Don't know what he surveils. It's kind of complex to see that. I don't... Let's see. It's apparently something to consider. While we are waiting to see what Derpy has decided. Alright, so he's going to keep it on top, which seems fine. And here's Landwar Elf, which you get to do for free now that Collective Brutality is out of the hand. Passing the turn back. Mazin's probably going to fire off end of turn fetch, get another shock land, and that's very likely line of play. Yep, here we go. End of turn fetch, get a tap shock land, develop your mana, no cost to your life. Let's see what he gets. He could get Overgrown Tomb, or he could get a Watery Grave. He's going to get an Overgrown Tomb, make sure he has enough blue mana. This deck is apparently very hungry for black mana. All of his lands are black producing, so that is something to note. And the Urborg also means that all of his lands are going to be even more black producing, including his fetch lands. Alright, untaps. Draw is another Haunted Dead, so he can play out the first of the Haunted Deads here. He can gather the pack. One of those is probably a little bit better than the other. I would imagine we're going to see gather the pack. Really trying to find more things in the graveyard, trying to find a Gurmag Angler. Angler is pretty good on this board state, even though cast downs are present. You want to be developing that game plan, and indeed we are going to see a Gather the Pack. Tapping Tomb and Grave, leaving open 1 mana. See what the hit is. Gather the Pack. You reveal the top 5, so it's like a Satyr Wayfinder, but you don't get a body, but you dig deeper, and instead of a land, you get a creature. So there's a Creeping Chill, a Haunted Dead, and a Stitcher Supplier. You take the Stitcher Supplier, ditch the rest, trigger Creeping Chill, Haunted Dead's in the yard. We can flashback Haunted Dead this turn, and discard another Haunted Dead and a Prized Amalgam. This is a very, 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 very good Gather the Pack. It's pretty much maximum value here. Getting to, for 2 mana, get a card in hand, mill a bunch, drain 3 for free, and get a 2/2 and a 1/1 flyer? All for the price of 2 mana? Very, very, very good play. Very, very, very strong turn. And you can start to see why it's so hard for this mid-range deck to keep up. Mid-range decks typically are trying to sit there and 1-for-1 the opponent, but it's very hard to 1-for-1 the opponent when you're getting so much value from each card that you play. So here's the second Stitcher, or the second Creeping Chill, and it's already at 13 life here for Derpy. It's very, very hard for him to keep up with this. Mazin's at 24. He's going to start needing plays like Hydroid Krasis to be able to actually keep in this game. I imagine what we're going to see is land, move to combat, swing, post-combat, flashback the Haunted Dead, but we'll see. We got land, move to combat, swinging. All 3 says, hey, if you want to trade off Llanowar Elves, that's fine with me. Means less mana on board for you. If you don't want to trade off Llanowar Elves, then you're going to be taking more damage, and I'm closer to winning the game. And I think this is definitely what you do, is you really put the pedal to the metal, and you say, hey, you don't got anything on board, it's time to just end this game as soon as possible. So down to 10 for Derpy. Post-combat, let's see if we get that flashback on Haunting Dead. Oh, we can do this anytime? Is it not as a sorcery? Even better. So we're going to get end of turn flashback. Ooh, Vivian. Vivian is pretty good on this board. So you can play Vivian plus her, start drawing cards, and it doesn't matter if she gets whacked here. You do have another turn with which to protect her with the Llanowar Elf and the double cast down, if I'm not mistaken. So we're going to be at 5. This is 6. So we're going to make 6 as 3. Actually, Vivian will only get 1 activation here. So you may need to hold up cast down the Haunting Dead and attempt to top deck a land. This is actually a lot trickier of a position. You can either kill the Vivian and get 1 card out of it, and essentially use Vivian as a 5 mana gain 6 draw a card, or you can use the cast downs to try and clear the board state to allow yourself to Vivian next turn, but I imagine that the number of cards that are going to come out in the next turn are going to be too much to keep up with. There's a Stitcher Supplier on the way, and the potential here is you discard 2 Haunted Deads, or an Amalgam and a Haunted Dead, and the flashback on the first Haunted Dead will let you flashback the second Haunted Dead to trigger Amalgam. Stitcher's on the field, and you're just not going to be able to keep up with the number of cards that are going to be coming back from the graveyard. I think the choice here maybe would be Vivian. We'll see. I obviously have not piloted this bug deck personally. And it looks like the choice is slam a Vivian and try and start gaining some life, essentially. Or you could use it to snipe down an Archamoeba. That does not seem like what you would want to do, and indeed the mode is going to be drawing cards. Let's see if I can get Vivian to stay on screen. Nope. That's fine. So look at the top 4, and you can get a thing. So we're getting rid of a prized Amalgam and a Haunted Dead in hand to bring back the Haunted Dead from the yard, which will trigger the Amalgam, get a thing. There's a lot of damage going to be coming in. It's not quite lethal, I don't believe. I believe it's 1 short of lethal. And yes, you cannot actually respond to the Planeswalker entering the battlefield, but as soon as they're plussed, you can respond before the ability resolves. So, yes, keeping timing correct here. So, yeah, both Haunting Dead's gone. Bring back a Haunting Dead. Make a token. Haunting Dead's going to trigger prized Amalgam. Amalgam's going to come back tapped, and that's 9 damage on board and very close to lethal. And what's the hope here for Masin is Stitcher Supplier hits a Creeping Chill, you just swing and kill next turn. The hope for a Derpy is Stitcher Supplier completely whiffs on anything relevant. You hit 3 lands, and you get a Hydroid Krasis off of this Vivian and draw a land the next turn to be able to fire off a pretty big Krasis. And it's not exactly the best hope, but it is the line of play that I think leads to the best chance to survive. There's also Vraska's Contempt, that would be a not terrible draw, or a Chupacabra would be able to help jump block some of this, but I think Hydroid Krasis really is the best draw on the board in this scenario. So Amalgam trigger, Spirit, Haunted Dead. We got 9 damage on board next turn, and Thief of Sanity is the grab. I don't think Thief does it here. You can only set up a Thief and a Cast Down, but not both together. Alright, Thief goes in hand. Should be the pass back here. Now, if you're Masin, I think you just put your opponent at 1 and try and flip a Creeping Chill here. I don't think there's too much value in trying to take out Vivian when you're in this commanding of a board state. You just go for the throat. Go for lethal. Alright, here we go. Untap draw is a Satyr Wayfinder, so yes, you definitely at this point go all-out attack, hit Derpy in the face, and then you get to mill 7 cards and try and find some way to kill someone. Alright, so we are going pre-combat. Tap 2 for Satyr Wayfinder. Looking for Creeping Chill. Let's see what the grab is. There is... Wow, is that 2 Stitchers? Okay, 2 Stitchers, Collective Brutality. You get to get back the Bloodstained Mire. Misses on Wayfinder. So, now the hope is that you get to play the Stitcher Supplier and hit the Creeping Chill. And we're already halfway through Masin's deck, by the way. He's at 30 cards left. This is kind of the power of the self-mill synergy engine that you can start setting up in these colors, is you get to use your graveyard as an essentially extension of your hand, and seeing 30 cards in a game is a very good way to win the game. Derpy's at 48 cards in his library, so he's only seeing 12. When you start looking at those ratios and the percentages between them, it's pretty ridiculous. And there's the Creeping Chill, and that's going to be the game. That's all-out lethal, swing, easy way to kill. So, I'm not entirely sure if this is a best of 3 or a best of 5, actually. Let's see if I can find that out really quickly, but we will be going to boards. Either if it's a best of 3, we will be going right now. If it's a best of 5, it will be after the next game. So here's the scoops. So it's a best of 5. We're getting another pre-board game, and this is again going to be pretty uphill for Derpy overall. Oh, it may not be a best of 5. Let us see. Getting confirmation from the players themselves. We are going to get some confirmation. Let's see. See if we can find it in the document I was given. Decklist, teams. I don't see anything for rules. Results. So the prior rounds were best of 3, but a lot of finals are best of 5. Would not surprise me to see best of 5 in this case. And alright, while we are getting that sorted out, we can actually start looking at and talking a little bit about deck lists, sideboard strategies, and the like. So for the Dredge deck sideboard, we have 3 Duresses, an Assassin's Trophy, 3 Disdainful Strokes, 2 Kalidas', 3 Rituals of Soot, 2 Murderous Cuts, and a Distended Mindbender. Alright. It is a best of 3. So we are going to see. Mazin says his sideboard is going to be 3 Duress in, 1 Distended Mindbender in, and 2 Murderous Cuts in, 4 Creeping Chills out, and 2 Narcomoebas out. So taking a little bit less graveyard synergy, but having the ability to pick apart his opponent's game plan a lot easier. I think that's pretty interesting. It's not as much as is the case with Modern Dredge or Legacy Dredge, where if you start taking out too many of these Dredge components, your deck can fall apart because you're taking out a core engine. He's taking out some of the payoffs of that engine in order to be able to grind a little bit better, so I think it's a pretty solid game plan here. And on the other side, Derpy Elephant has in his sideboard, well, he's got 2 Duresses, 3 Crawl Harpooners, 2 Negates, 2 Essence Extractions, 2 Liliana Last Hopes, 2 Thrashing Brontodons, and 2 Languishes. So I would think you will see some Languishes, maybe the Lilianas, and perhaps the Essence Extractions. The control role is definitely on the side of Derpy here. He is not the person who's going to be able to put the pedal to the metal, so I think you'll see more transition towards cards like that that are more control-oriented, and Liliana's a very hard-to-deal-with win condition. Cards I think come out, you're probably not going to see Vivian Reeds. She's a little bit slow for this matchup, and does not do enough in the controlling role. You could see some of the removal taken out in the likes of the cast downs, or perhaps the collective brutalities, just to make more room, again, for better forms of interaction. Llanowar Elves may also come out, because mana acceleration's not as important early on. I don't know that you're going to see too much out of like the Frilled Mystic plan, so that may also come out, but we will double check in a minute. Derpy is finishing up and typing out. So minus 4 Llanowars, minus 2 Thought Erasures, and coming in are 6 cards, minus 1 Frilled Mystic, so we got 7 cards out. Not too shocking to see in very lopsided matchups where you're trying to transition to a different role from being, mid-range decks particularly, from being a mid-range I can be either controlling or aggressive, to knowing which side of the matchup you're going to fall on. So Thought Erasure's not going to play as much of a role here. There are a lot of misses when you try and like Thought Erasure and maybe you only can hit Haunted Dead or Prized Amalgams. That's not a good feeling. Llanowar Elves, again, you just don't need to be trying to ramp, you need to be interacting as much as possible. And Frilled Mystic, there's a lot less value in countering spells when you are dealing with mostly triggered abilities. So we are getting +3 Crawl Harpooner, +2 Languish, and +2 Liliana. So definitely much more control-oriented. Crawl Harpooner also trying to play the 2-for-1 role, where it comes in, it snipes down like a Narcomoeba, and then it leaves a body on the ground. So, looks like we're going to get into Game 2. I think pretty solid board plans from both players. It's always really interesting to see how Graveyard Synergy decks sideboard. I've always enjoyed it. So, here we go. 7 cards drawn for Derp, 7 cards for Mazin, and we'll get hands in a brief second. Again, with a Graveyard Synergy deck and the lack of graveyard hate out of the bug mid-range deck, it's going to be a pretty hard one. So, for Derpy, we've got Thought Erasure, Overgrown Tomb, Woodland Cemetery, Swamp, Cast Down, Assassin's Trophy, Crawl Harpooner. It does lack a blue source, but pretty good overall, yeah. So I think not being able to cast Thought Erasure, but having essentially 3 removal spells is pretty good. Masin's also going to keep Overgrown Tomb, Blooming Marsh, Overgrown Tomb, so also does not have his mana exactly, but he has lots of castable spells here: Duress, Stitcher's Player, Gather the Pack, Collective Brutality, all very castable. Extra Swamps, not too bad. Blooming Marsh to start off, and going to lead on Stitcher Supplier, leaving the Duress in hand turn 1. If it does end up getting a Thought Erasure back, it could be a little bit inconvenient, but let's see what he milled really quick. He milled a Murderous Cut, a Satyr Wayfinder, and a Swamp. Murderous Cut probably would be nice to still have, but the other two you're not too far off of caring about, and a Liliana here is actually really good. This Liliana actually is about to be picked up by Duress, so there is a little bit of convenient timing here by firing off Stitcher's turn 1 as opposed to this Duress, because he gets to pick up the Liliana that just got drawn, and that's a little bit of a heartbreaking situation for Derpy, where just if slightly different decisions were made, you get a much different outcome here. So if Masin actually decides not to go back and he decides to fire off like a Satyr Wayfinder, this could also turn out different. Ooh, he does. So now you're needing Derpy to draw a blue source, and if he draws this blue source, or no, he doesn't even need to draw a blue source. He just play Woodland Cemetery and slam a Liliana, actually. It's really good. So, whoa. Satyr Wayfinder threw cards all over this table. So it hits another Satyr Wayfinder, Urborg, Murderous Cut, and Prized Amalgam. So take Urborg, mill the rest. Getting an Amalgam in the yard's pretty good. Not getting a second Murderous Cut's also a little bit annoying. But unfortunately for him, not deciding to Duress here is actually potentially going to cost him this game. The rest of Derpy's hand is essentially removal, including this Liliana, and this Liliana is going to go absolutely nuts on this board. Absolutely nuts. She gets to pick off whatever, and here's the Breeding Pool as well. So you could play Breeding Pool into Thought Erasure first, but I think you just slam this Lily. It's such a powerful play, and that is exactly what's going to happen. Here comes Liliana, the Last Hope, going to probably kill this Satyr Wayfinder to try and keep some synergies from happening during his end step. Tick up. What are we killing? Yep, Wayfinder. Goodbye, Satyr Wayfinder, and there's not actually a lot of time for Masin to find a very, very good answer for this Liliana. She will end this game, absolutely, and not too many more turns, and considering double removal spell plus a hand-picking spell in hand for Derpy, this is actually a pretty deadly scenario, and there's the way that you pressure this Liliana. A Gurmag Angler can come out, in fact, this turn, with backup, so 7 cards in the yard, you can lead on Duress, take apart the hand just a little bit, and get some backup. You could also hit this Collective Brutality plus Duress to try and stop any shenanigans coming out here from Derpy. So we're going to see Collective Brutality, probably modes Kill the Crawl Harpooner and Duress you. See what the other mode is. It is in fact the Duress. So he gets the double kill spell and decide how he wants to proceed here. This is really interesting, because Derpy does not have a response right now for... This is such weird geometry. The way the mana and the cards line up, has Masin played a land this turn? I believe he has. Urborg, yes. So he can't actually safely run out the Angler this turn. He has to go take a kill spell and the Thought Erasure, I believe? Yeah, so he gets the Thought Erasure gone. And now he can Duress a kill spell, but there's still a kill spell left in hand, which can take care of this Gurmag Angler. So he has to find another way to get a card out of hand. before he can actually safely deploy Gurmag Angler. This is a really interesting way these draws have lined up for both players. It's been very, very fascinating. Alright, so Liliana goes down. Back to 3. Not too much else to be done here, yeah. Passes back. Collective Brutality right back. This is very, very interesting. So, you can't Thought Erasure. You can lead on Collective Brutality and then leave up the Assassin's Trophy. That gets rid of Gather the Pack. And at that point, you're just dealing with... it depends on what the Stitchers... Okay, so... Ooh. Liliana going down. We're milling... Okay, so Vivian Reed, Thief of Sanity. And then, let's see... Return 8 creature cards. You can get anything. Yeah, we're getting back either a Crawl Harpoon or a Thief of Sanity here. I would imagine the Thief? I imagine it has to be the Thief here. It really doesn't seem like it would be any other way. Yeah, here's the Thief. I believe you shock here. This is an interesting way. So he doesn't want to kill this Stitcher Supplier and open up the graveyard synergies that could potentially lead to the Liliana dying, but at some point he basically has to, and he's going to get a Thief instead on the table. Thief also very good. Are there any draws here that just automatically kill the Liliana? Any kind of removal just kills the Liliana, and there is not removal here, so... Another land. Yeah, Gather the Pack first. See what the mills are, and there is Spell Mastery, so he can actually get 2 creatures here if he chooses. I would imagine you want to get 2 creatures sometimes, but not always. So, Stitcher Supplier and Gurmag Angler are both creatures I imagine you easily slam and keep in here. Driven to Despair is a very good spell. We're definitely keeping a Stitcher Supplier and a Gurmag and being very happy with it. This gets through that issue with the Liliana. 10 cards in right now, and that's going to go up to 13. Plus, the Stitcher Supplier can mill more, so you can slam a Gurmag Angler and another. You can slam a Stitcher Supplier and a Gurmag Angler this turn, as well as next turn, and start trying to eat through these removal spells and get at that Liliana. On the other side, you also have to wonder at what point can you swing with this Thief without just opening up your Liliana to immediately dying. There is not a very good way to not have your Lily die here. I suppose... No, because Collective's not instant. There's not really a way to keep your Liliana from dying to 2 Gurmags right now. This is very, very close lines on both sides. Both players trying to find ways in and around their opponent's game here. Masin definitely was positioning himself for Gurmag Angler. Now that he's got 2, he has a lot of options. I think, yeah, so we are very likely going to fetch here, maybe just for a basic. Or, shocking, probably not too bad here either. It opens up your blue mana a little bit, although I don't know how much he's got in the post-board scenario for blue cards. Ooh. What? Wait. Quick shortcut here. Okay, he's saying these cards are still in my graveyard, but, you know, hey, I'm just going to put them... Okay, so he's putting them on top. Exiles 12. Oh, he's just going to slam both Anglers. Okay. Here we go. Slam both Anglers is the play. Let everything come out all at once. And he says, hey, do you have multiple removal spells here? If you don't, Liliana's probably dead. And Liliana's very likely dead. I think it takes another Assassin's Trophy to not just instantly die. Alright, untaps. Another Assassin's Trophy right there. That's what it takes to not die. Is immediately get the thing you need. Oh man, that is a little bit of an amazing top deck. You do have to set yourself up into these scenarios. That pretty much was it. It had to be an Assassin's Trophy or Cast Down to deal with one of these anglers, and that is perfect. So, all right, swing 2. We get to figure out what cards. Let's see. Look at the top 3 cards. Exile one of them, and put the rest of the yards. So he gets to look at 3. He gets to get 1, and then the other 2 do go in the yard. So you have to be a little bit careful when you're trying to play around with these graveyard synergy decks, and you Thief of Sanity them. You don't want to be putting an amalgam in their graveyard or what have you. We'll see if we can actually get this chat. Thief. So we're going to get the thief cards confirmed over here. In my chat so I can figure out what all's going on. So the other 2 cards milled were a land and a gather the back. I think that's perfectly fine. So we're going to get confirmation on that. We're going to see Liliana take up. Maybe you hold the double Assassin's Trophy until the next turn. So a Haunted Dead was the card taken, probably the best of those 3. And Haunted Dead, he's got the 4 mana for it. It does chump Gurmag Anglers, but it loses 2 removal spells, so I think you just keep your own removal spells up here. Like, I don't think you cast this for several turns. Liliana goes back up to 2. The milled cards were Collective Brutality, Land, Satyr, Wayfinder. Actually, all pretty okay hits here. And Mazin's a little bit on the back foot. This is the double Assassin's Trophy of Mazin's Nightmares. He had to know something was up as soon as the Thief swung, either desperation or purely that, hey, my opponent just has it. And it did in fact turn out that his opponent had it. Double trophy coming in, killing both anglers, and this is now a very commanding position for Derpy. I mean, this is very much game-winning at this point. He's got a really good creature on the field, Collective Brutality in hand to deal with anything small. Thief of Sanity is already hit, so he's going to be up at least 1 card from it. The Haunted Dead can come down as well next turn if he doesn't want to fire off Brutality. And there's just a lot of good stuff going on. Fail to find for Mazin. Pass back, untaps. Mazin shuffles. Draws a Narcomoeba, the worst feeling in the world. Especially when you board out 2. Drawing into your free spells is never something you want to do. Alright, here we go. Stitcher Supplier, let's see what the hit is. The hit is Stitcher Supplier, Collective Brutality, and a prized amalgam, so still not finding a way to get these amalgams back. This is going to be very hard at this point. He's down to really useless cards in hand. I don't know how much you want to... yeah. A little bit of banter here, I would suppose. So we're going to get Yeah, just to pass back. I don't really think you want to fetch and cast an Archamoeba. I suppose if you do, you can block a Thief once, or get in and slow down Lily by a turn, but there's not too much equity in that. So the untap, ooh, the draw is a Crawl Harpooner. So that would have been a very sad little Narcomoeba getting sniped off, and still the Stitcher's dying. Let's see what happens now. This should still just be tick up Lily. Okay, so first swing. Damage connects. See what the choice becomes for Derpy, and then where he goes from here. You could just slam last turn's Haunted Dead pretty freely. That would be very good. On this board, you get to gum up the ground and the air for 4 mana. And then you can take up Lily and say you have to have 2 removal spells plus some kind of a hasty threat, which I don't think is going to happen. Masin, so the other 2 cards milled were lands. You definitely don't want those. Alright, Derpy Elephant goes second main. Taps 4 is going to play this Haunted Dead and pass, I believe. First card, he says. So the other card exiled was a Bloodstained Mire. The unfortunate... See if they can figure out how to get a thiefed card into play from this face-down exile. Reveal unknown. Yeah, he has to make sure and double check that he's going to be revealing the right card. You don't want to pay 4 mana and then flip a Bloodstained Mire and let them know you don't have anything else. Alright, there we go. This is a token. We've got... So, we are, again, trying to sort out how to get through Thief, not on the tabletop. Thief is a very easy card to tabletop, but not necessarily online all the time. I think he's trying to get it out of the face-down zone, but I'm not entirely sure. He has a face-down, yeah, so we're going to let that sort out really quick. While we do that, let's really think about, do we go to a Game 3 here pretty soon? Very likely. What changes of anything for either player in Game 3 is a little bit up to each, but I think that Masin would want to change his deck if he has any way to deal with... He does not have a way to deal with... Well, he can Assassin's Trophy. Assassin's Trophy is a way to deal with Liliana. I would think that would want to come in. And he may take out some number of Duresses for some slightly more proactive-oriented cards. Perhaps the Disdainful Stroke. Not likely, but perhaps. We're gonna see. Do we get it? Did we get it? Alright, that's a clone. That's a token. Alright, that's the Haunted Dead. We've finally cleared it up, I believe. Token, whatever. Okay. Alright. +1, no targets from this Liliana, so trying to limit the amount of synergies going on with, yeah, so there's, the Haunted Dead went into exile from the battlefield just because token copy or whatever. Alright, so here we go. Untaps. Again, this is just trying to limit the amount of self-synergy the Stitcher Supplier can enable before the turn. So if you kill it now and it reveals one of the last two Narcomoebas, the two Amalgams come back, and then everything starts to get a little bit screwy. And that's just going to be concede for Mazin, drawing another land. And we'll see if either player wants to sideboard again. But that was a really, really... That game could have gone a lot differently on different timings on choosing when to duress and whatnot. If you duress turn 1 for Mazin, he misses the Liliana, but if he duresses turn 2, he completely takes that game in a different direction. The Liliana's never on the battlefield. It's never a problem you have to deal with. So, looks like Derpy Elephant says, I'm not going to change anything. That worked fantastically. See if Mazin's going to change anything here. And this is coming down to Game 3, and I don't know that either of the players would have actually said pre-game that that was going to be the case. Looks like Mazin is indeed going to be changing. So cutting the one Distended Mindbender that he had brought in for a Assassin's Trophy definitely sounds like the thing to do. So not going to be too much more proactive, but bringing in at least one answer for Liliana here is very important, especially after it just absolutely thrashed you. Alright, both players drawing up to 7. Alright, hands please. Make sure we can see both hands, and looks like a mulligan from Mazin. Languish, Polluted Delta, Vraska's Contempt, Languish, Ravenous Chupacabra, Hydroid Crisis, yeah, you send that one back. Second hand is Cast Down, Polluted Delta, Thief of Sanity. Not that great from Derpy, but better than the first hand. I think he would rather have had one of those rituals. All caps keep, so maybe it's exactly what he wants to see. Mazin is looking at a hand that's a little bit... It's fine. It's not too bad, actually. Gather the Pack's pretty good. Collective Brutality allows you to perhaps look for that Liliana before it can come down and kill you. So, both players scrying. We may or may not. So, Derpy, we're going to see what his card was. Mazin moved to the bottom. He may or may not tell us what he moved to the bottom. It does not look like it's going to be the case. We're going into the game. Bloodstained Mire, looking for that end of turn fetch. And here we have an Assassin's Trophy, and we're going to see a Polluted Delta with a similar game plan. End of turn fetch. So, here's end of turn fetch. Bloodstained Mire, going to go ahead, get an Overgrown Tomb, or I've never seen a game of Magic played. It's going to be an Overgrown Tomb, I'm 99% sure. Start looking to fire off a Gather the Pack, and see where he goes from there. So, Overgrown Tomb, into play tapped. Going to untap and draw a card. Card drawn will be another Driven to Despair. This is actually one of the worst draws in this position. I'm not sure he could really afford to go to 5, but drawing a third Driven is very, very bad in this position. He has no creatures with which to really make use of that. And while he can discard copies to Collective Brutality, it's not got too much going on for it. So Collective Brutality, Murderous Cut, Haunted Dead, Stitcher Supplier, and a land. You're going to take Stitcher's Supplier, and you're a little bit going to miss a Murderous Cut, but not too much. Haunted Dead, you definitely want in the yard. 100%. He's got the ability next turn to either just bring back the Haunted Dead or to play the Stitcher Supplier. And if he draws the land, bring back Haunted Dead, so pretty okay with that one, I would imagine. And this should be a pass back. It isn't pass back. We should see... Ooh. He's not going to end of turn fetch, so he actually may incur some damage here. Or he's going to just pass again? Yep, he's passing again, so he's going on a very reactive, very slow-looking game plan. So it looks like Mazin's just going to drop Stitchers. The draw of the land, I think, really makes that an easy choice. Drop the Stitchers, mill 3, then you can bring back Haunted Dead with a lot more information. And Haunted Dead finally turns on some of these other things. These Stitchers have been throwing cards all over the table, so Assassin's Trophy, Satyr Wayfinder, and Haunted Dead. This trophy mill is actually a pretty big one. It is a one-off card in Mazin's deck, and he no longer has access to it, so he does not have a direct single-card answer to Liliana the Last Hope left in his entire deck. If it does happen that Liliana is on the board in any sort of a close scenario where just a couple of things either way is going to swing the game, that could be a very big factor. Alright, pass back. Looks like Derpy is contemplating whether or not he wants to go double fetch in step or just go to his turn. I believe the answer is you want to double fetch, you want to be developing your mana here without taking a bunch of life. The Haunted Dead is coming back next turn, or maybe the turn after. I imagine next turn. I imagine going to be binning a Collective Brutality and a Driven to Despair, and then casting one of the other Driven to Despairs, trying to get 3 cards, and start developing that. Or he could also be flashing back the Despair part of Driven to Despair, so that he gets 3 cards out of Derpy's hand. Either way, he's looking to generate a card advantage at some point, so Derpy fetches once. Do you fetch again? Yes. Alright, so the answer is yes or double fetching. Did not shortcut it, so he was actually thinking about each of those fetches individually, but I do believe this is the correct response here, is to get as much as you can and really develop your mana. So he's got blue-black, black-green, and green-black all in play after probably the land drop this turn. So he could drop a Thief of Sanity here. Thief of Sanity gets a little bit trumped by, well, Thief of Sanity does get Collective Brutality here, so he doesn't actually get to untap and do anything with it. And his opponent would actually very much appreciate being able to Collective Brutality and discard a single card to both duress and get rid of a Thief of Sanity. Alright, so it's not going to be the play. The play is hold up a kill spell. With the tapped water grave 2 mana available, we're going to bring back Haunted Dead. What do you discard? Is it 2 Driven to Despairs or a single Driven to Despair and a Collective Brutality is the question. Looks like 2 Driven to Despairs, so card advantage going to come in either way on either mode of Driven to Despair, but it looks like he's going to go for the more negative card advantage of getting cards out of his opponent's hand rather than the positive card advantage on the green side of getting cards into his own hand. Both are fine. With 6 cards left, I definitely am okay with getting cards out of my opponent's hand. Alright, untaps. Draw is another land. And this is actually a very interesting land drop. If he shocks here, he could be going for Driven plus one of the Driven to Despairs in the graveyard and generate a lot of card advantage all at once. So it is going to be a flashback on Despair, the aftermath portion of it, and taps 2 more for, I believe this is going to be the Driven out of his hand. No, he's going for the double up on Despair. And this does give the text to all of his creatures twice. So now each of them hitting will get 2 cards out of hand. Alright, here's combat, and he is swinging in, trying to absolutely strip all the cards out of Elephant's hand for combat. Here's 2, I imagine the cast down. The cast down is indeed the choice here. Hit the biggest creature, and still gonna end up taking just a lot of incidental damage here from in the form of cards. He is losing a lot of cards here. no matter what. So this is going to be 4 cards out of hand. What do you keep is the question. Swing to discard 4. He's going all in on Thief of Sanity here, and the perfect answer in the form of this Collective Brutality is going to put a big stop to that. So, untap Thief of Sanity number 2. Alright, so Collective Brutality is a very good temporary answer, but I don't think... Yeah, so he could Brutality discard Driven to Despair and use the Despair flashback element to get rid of the other Thief, but I think you actually are very incentivized into using the Driven part of this, or he's going to Stitcher Supplier and see what happens. Let's see what... Okay, so yeah, this is Collective Brutality, kill that guy. This is going to be probably the Driven part of Driven to Despair, draw 2 cards, and Mazin is up a ton of cards in this matchup already. He's got +4 cards from Despair, here's +2 from Driven, and yeah, that's really, really, really strong. Draws are Duress and Land. Second main phase. Let's see. Should be... Alright, he's going to Shock, and Stitchers probably... Yep. Another Stitcher Supplier, mill some things, and see if he can get the Driven to Despair to go. Ooh! Gurmag Angler is not what you want to mill. Murderous Cut, not what you want to mill either. Murderous Cut's very good flexible answer. Gurmag Angler, just one of the best cards ever printed in terms of creatures. Very, very underrated for a lowly card. Little common. And yeah, Derpy's turn is coming up now. So, Cast Down or Thief of Sanity. If he plays Thief, he's going to just slam Thief. So Cast Down is very likely to get eaten by Duress because Mazin's not got a lot else to do with the mana, so you might as well. Especially when you're going to be drawing land number 6 here. You might as well... Okay, so swinging with just Stitchers, he says, hey, cool. Would you like to take damage or enable my self-mill? And Derpy says, I would like to take damage. I would not like to enable your self-milling. Alright, so second main phase is going to come around. Alright, we're going to see whether or not Mazin's going to hold up 2 cards in hand and say, yep, he's going to hold up 2 cards and say, I've got 2 reactive spells, stop me. Derpy is probably going to ignore this and just swing in. But we will see. This is also the potential for a 2/2 Krasis. It will draw a card, gain a life. It's pretty small in terms of... Or no, it's a 1/1 Krasis. Won't draw a card or gain a life. My math is off. Very small Krasis. I doubt we're going to see that. We could see the Thief swing in, and if it finds a land, the land be used to get a 2/2 Krasis. That might be worth it. Outside of that, I don't know how much that's really worth. Let's see, do we have a Haunted Dead? We do have a Haunted Dead. We have 2 Haunted Deads from Mazin, but he can only get 1 back. So he's not holding up 2 cards and pretending he has anything reactive necessarily. He's probably just looking at flashing back Haunted Dead. Actually, if he flashes back Haunted Dead here, yeah, and in the attack step, he's going to be flashing back Haunted Dead, making 2 tokens, double blocking with the tokens, leaving a Haunted Dead 2 Stitcher Supplier in play, and then you get to Despair again next turn and get the rest of the cards out of Derpy's hand and be left with a board of, I mean, small creatures, small little 1/1s, 2/2s, and whatnot, but that can end the game. I mean, we've definitely got cards in Magic that will end the game like that. Enough 1/1s is why Young Pyromancer is so strong. May I go to blockers, says Mazin, with 2 innocent little flying spirits lined up right in front of that Thief of Sanity. Before blockers, so is this going to be a cast? It's going to be a cast down on a spirit. And he says, alright, now you get to decide, do I get a card or not. So, one spirit's gone. You're very okay with that on Masin's side in some ways, that a removal spell's been used like that, but... Alright, so one spirit gone. Masin can give him a card or not. I don't know which you want to do. Go to blockers, he says. Blocks with a spirit, so no cards. And this will just be a pass back. So Hydroid Krasis in hand, if the Despair hits it, it's a loss, but it's not a horrific it's not a horrific loss, and this is the second time the Narcomoeba has been drawn this game. It sucks. Alright, so here's combat. He's just going to swing, swing, swing. Go in for 4. He says, I've got a much faster clock. Especially with this Narcomoeba going to come down. It actually will just block in the air again, and you're perfectly fine with this. Masin's got the right idea. He is in the driver's seat of this race in a big way, and Derpy needs to be drawing land plus Languish, it looks like. Oh, heartbreaker. We've got 2 1/1 Kracies, it looks like, so Derpy's gonna go to combat. He's gonna keep making Masin block here, but he cannot swing like this next turn. Go to blocks, Masin asks. This should be an affirmative. And Masin at this point knows that there are 2 dead cards in his hand. He may think it's Languishes, but it is in all actuality Hydroid Kracies. And yeah, Derpy needs to be drawing a bunch of lands at this point. Yeah, it's a 1/1 Krasis. It does nothing except be a 1/1 Krasis. This is very unfortunate. Of all the things you want to be doing with Hydroid Krasis, it is not to be a 1/1. Ooh, Gurmag Angler is actually one of the best draws in this entire scenario right now. So, Masin gonna swing in, mill some more cards to start looking at even more, or even less important things to exile with Gurmag Angler if this Hydroid Krasis blocks here, and it really, really should block and trade at some point. But there's very, very little that Derpy Elephant can draw that gets him out of this. It's going to need to be a scenario that starts with the land, I believe. If he starts with land, he can get a Krasis onto, gain 2 life, get another blocker, get another trade-off here, have some stuff survive it, and then also potentially draw into more lands, or a Languish off of that Krasis for 2 that draws him just a 1 card. Like, it's very narrow, but I think it has to start with Krasis getting cast for 2. I believe that's the only way that you get out of this scenario. So, Narcomoeba, Polluted Delta, 2 Bloodstain Mires, and a bunch of mana. Gets a Gurmag Angler. Vivian Reed's a horrible draw. 5 mana when you don't have 5 mana feels really bad, unless it's Force Will. But this is Frontier, not Legacy. Legacy matches will be coming up in the Team Series in the future, so keep an eye out on UnTap's Discord server for those. And yeah, playing another Krasis here is going to feel really bad. First Krasis has to chump the Gurmag, then Thief chumps Stitchers, and you're down to 1, so I think you have to play the other Krasis to be at 2 to set yourself up for top decks, but I'm not entirely sure what you top deck at that point. Or is he going to go for the Thief Hail Mary? Alright, this is the Thief Hail Mary what we're going to see. Masin does not have a blocker for this. However, if it is a miss, it is going to be game deciding, so he says, I would rather not risk it on 1 more turn with Hydroid Krasis playing chump blocker mode. I want to see what you got. I want to get an Assassin's Trophy and live, or a cast down and live, or whatever we can. He wants to find removal and live. Alright, so he's got something. Let's see what the other 2 cards are. It is land, land. Even a little land here is actually not that bad. If he finds Another land? Then that means he can play this Krasis. Ooh, I have an idea that this was not an ideal thing, because we are getting the other Krasis for 1, not 2, so it wasn't a land, it was some kind of something. Yeah, 2 Blooming Marshes doesn't do it, so this is going to be Despair. Getting played here. It gets the Vivian out of hand no matter what, but the Vivian didn't matter. GG's from Derpy Elephant, actually. Is Despair actually just lethal? Gain Menace. Yes, actually it is lethal. Thanks, Menace. Alright, that's what you get for not reading all of the card. So, Menace, a very important part of Driven to Despair, as it turns out. So, GG's. Mazin's going to take it 2-1 over Derpy Elephant. Really well played by Derpy, though. That game, too, it came down to some close decisions on both parts, but Derpy made a lot of really good choices there, and he went for an aggressive line with this Thief, and see if we can figure out what the Thief card was. Let's see if Mazin will flip it for us. If he doesn't, that's fine. It was an entertaining match in either case. It was it was another Blooming Marsh. That's very unfortunate. So yeah, we are unfortunate. Oh man. Good job to both players. Good games to both players, and that's gonna wrap it up here. My name's Glass Ninja. This has been the UOL UnTac Open League, that is, Team Series. And this is the Frontier matches in the finals. This is Team B Frontier matches. And we will have the other matches back soon in the series, so if you want to stick around and keep watching this team series, look forward to Team A's Frontier match between Dragonfly and Somnus, Modern match on Team A between Checkmate and Inui, Legacy match between Carmenova and Zedras, both really fun players. I really enjoy playing with both of them. Or the other Team B matches, Modern between CC Nobubbies, that's a name, CC Nobubbies and Diamond, and the Legacy matches between Viperfang and Seuss, 2 other players that I greatly enjoy playing with. But that's all that I've got for you guys tonight. Thank you for tuning in. Feel free to chat at me on the Discord server, and until next time, have good luck out there.